Think for a moment. When was the last time you truly questioned the way you think? Not what you think, but how deeply your thoughts actually go. Imagine living in a world where most people believe they are thinking freely, yet their thoughts rarely go beyond the surface. A world where opinions are loud, information is abundant, but genuine understanding is rare. In this video, we will explore the highest levels of thought and why modern society seems trapped in shallow thinking. And pay close attention, because the final insight revealed later is the most important and transformative of all, one that can fundamentally change how you perceive yourself, others, and reality itself. We live in an era of unprecedented access to information. Knowledge is everywhere, constantly flowing through screens, conversations, and endless streams of content. Yet, paradoxically, depth of thought has become increasingly rare. Thinkers, psychologists, and observers of human nature across history warned that when thinking becomes superficial, human potential is quietly suffocated. This is not just an intellectual problem, it is an existential one. The quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. Before we go deeper, take a moment to support this journey. If this exploration resonates with you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this video, and comment your reflections below. What you are about to hear may challenge your assumptions and reveal patterns of thinking you did not even realize were controlling you. At the most basic level, shallow thinking is reactive. It operates on impulse, emotion, and borrowed opinions. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman described this as fast thinking, a mode driven by automatic responses and mental shortcuts. While useful for survival, this level of thought dominates far too much of modern life. Social media outrage, ideological tribalism, and constant distraction all thrive here. When thought remains reactive, the individual becomes easy to manipulate, easy to predict, and easy to control. Robert Greene understood that human beings are often guided by invisible forces they rarely examine. People frequently choose comfort over truth because certainty feels safer than uncertainty. Shallow thinking offers comfort. It provides ready-made answers and familiar narratives. To think deeply requires confronting uncertainty, ambiguity, and sometimes uncomfortable truths about oneself. This is why society unconsciously discourages depth. Depth disrupts convenience. It threatens systems built on compliance rather than awareness. As thinking begins to mature, it moves beyond reaction into reflection. This is where questioning begins. Why do I believe this? Where did this idea come from? Is it truly mine? The philosopher Socrates built his entire method on this level, insisting that an unexamined life is not worth living. Reflection introduces friction into the mind. It slows thought down. It forces awareness. Yet many people retreat at this stage because reflection exposes internal contradictions and unresolved fears. But the highest levels of thought do not stop at questioning beliefs. They move into integration. At this level, thinking becomes holistic rather than fragmented. Robert Greene often explores the importance of seeing human behavior as a complete system rather than isolated events. Here, emotion, logic, intuition, and experience are no longer in conflict. They are synthesized. The individual no longer asks only what is true, but what is meaningful, what is aligned, and what leads to inner coherence. Society struggles with this level because it cannot be mass-produced. Deep thinking requires solitude, silence, and sustained attention. Three things modern culture actively erodes. The constant stimulation of the external world pulls consciousness outward, leaving little space for inner development. As many modern observers of human behavior have warned, when humanity becomes obsessed with efficiency and distraction, it forgets how to truly think. Pause for a moment and reflect. How often do you allow yourself to sit with a thought without immediately seeking distraction? How many of your beliefs have you deeply examined rather than inherited? These questions are not meant to judge, but to awaken awareness. Awareness is the first doorway out of shallow thinking. What comes next is even more challenging, because the deeper the level of thought, the more responsibility it demands. To think deeply is to see clearly, and to see clearly is to realize that much of what we accept as normal is quietly limiting us. In the next part, we will explore how systems, culture, and even education subtly condition shallow thinking, and why breaking free feels so uncomfortable yet so necessary. Tell me now, do you feel that society encourages deep thinking, or does it reward conformity and speed? Your reflection may reveal more than you expect. As we move deeper, it becomes impossible to ignore an uncomfortable truth. Shallow thinking is not accidental. It is cultivated, it is rewarded, and in many ways it is engineered. From early childhood, most educational systems prioritize memorization over understanding, obedience over inquiry, and speed over depth. Students are trained to provide correct answers rather than to ask meaningful questions. Over time, this conditions the mind to associate thinking with performance rather than exploration. Modern observers of human nature have warned that society often produces individuals who can function efficiently, but rarely think beyond the structures placed before them. When success is measured by productivity alone, contemplation becomes a liability. Silence is mistaken for laziness. Doubt is perceived as weakness. Yet every major intellectual breakthrough in history emerged from individuals who dared to pause, to reflect, and to question what others accepted without thought. Language itself plays a crucial role in maintaining shallow thinking. When vocabulary shrinks, so does perception. George Orwell understood this deeply. He argued that when language is simplified, complex thought becomes impossible. If a person lacks the words to describe subtle emotional or philosophical experiences, those experiences slowly disappear from awareness. Society then becomes emotionally reactive and intellectually rigid, unable to process nuance or contradiction. Another powerful force trapping society in shallow thinking is constant stimulation. The modern mind is rarely at rest. Notifications, entertainment, and endless information streams create the illusion of engagement, while quietly eroding attention. The psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi emphasized that deep thinking requires sustained focus, a state increasingly rare in a culture built on interruption. Without attention, thought fragments. Without continuity, insight cannot emerge. There is also fear beneath shallow thinking. To think deeply is to confront uncomfortable questions about identity, purpose, and mortality. Many people avoid depth not because they are incapable, but because depth demands courage. Robert Greene often explores how individuals avoid confronting uncomfortable realities, because facing themselves requires discipline, awareness, and emotional strength. Shallow thinking becomes a psychological defense, protecting the individual from inner conflict. Yet there is a cost. When thinking remains shallow, life becomes repetitive and hollow. People feel busy but unfulfilled, informed but confused, connected but lonely. Meaning cannot emerge from surface-level engagement with existence. Meaning requires depth, and depth requires the willingness to descend into uncertainty. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your daily thinking is truly your own? How often do you repeat opinions without investigating them? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations, because the moment you become aware of conditioning, you gain the possibility of freedom. As we continue, the next layer of understanding reveals something even more profound. Shallow thinking does not only affect society, it shapes identity itself. In the next part, we will explore how deep thought transforms not just what you know, but who you become. At higher levels of thought, the mind undergoes a fundamental shift. Thinking is no longer about accumulation of information, but about transformation of consciousness. This is where philosophy, psychology, and the study of human nature converge. Thinkers like Plato believed that most people live in a kind of mental cave, mistaking shadows for reality. Deep thinking is the process of turning toward the light, even when it initially blinds. At this level, self-observation becomes central. Instead of identifying completely with thoughts and emotions, the individual begins to observe them. Viktor Frankl described this capacity as the space between stimulus and response. In that space lies freedom. The ability to pause, reflect, and choose rather than react marks a decisive break from shallow thinking. Deep thinkers recognize that beliefs are not facts, but interpretations shaped by experience, culture, and personal history. This realization is destabilizing at first. It dismantles certainty, but it also liberates. When beliefs are seen as constructions, they can be revised. Growth becomes possible. Identity becomes fluid rather than rigid. Another defining feature of higher-level thinking is the ability to hold paradox. Shallow thinking seeks simple answers and absolute certainty. Deep thinking accepts complexity. It understands that opposing ideas can both contain truth. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard emphasized that anxiety often arises not from ignorance, but from awareness of possibility. The more deeply one thinks, the more possibilities appear. This is why deep thinking often feels isolating. When an individual begins to see beyond collective narratives, they may feel disconnected from mainstream conversations. Robert Greene has explored how individuals who develop uncommon awareness often experience distance from ordinary patterns of thought. Yet this solitude is not emptiness. It is space. Space for original thought, authentic values, and inner alignment. Emotions also transform at this level. Rather than being suppressed or indulged, they are understood. Emotional intelligence emerges from depth of reflection. The individual learns to ask not just what they feel, but why. This integration of emotion and reason leads to psychological maturity. Consider this carefully. If your thinking determines your perception, and your perception determines your reality, then the depth of your thinking shapes the very world you experience. This is not metaphorical, it is psychological fact. Two people can live in the same environment, yet inhabit entirely different realities based on how deeply they think. So ask yourself again, are you thinking to confirm what you already believe, or are you thinking to discover what is true? The answer reveals where you are on this journey. And now we arrive at the most important insight of all, the one that ties everything together, the one that has the power to fundamentally alter how you live. At the highest level of thought, thinking transcends the self. The individual no longer seeks depth, merely for personal understanding, but for alignment with something greater than ego. This is where wisdom emerges. Wisdom is not intelligence, it is clarity. It is the ability to see reality as it is, without distortion from fear or desire. The philosopher Baruch Spinoza believed that true freedom comes from understanding necessity. When you deeply comprehend the forces shaping your mind, your emotions, and your behavior, you are no longer unconsciously controlled by them. Awareness dissolves compulsion. This is the ultimate liberation from shallow thinking. At this level, thinking becomes intentional. The individual chooses what to engage with, what to question, and what to ignore. Attention is guarded like a sacred resource. Silence is no longer uncomfortable. It becomes fertile. Insight arises not from constant input, but from deep assimilation. This is why the final truth is so powerful. Society remains trapped in shallow thinking, not because depth is inaccessible, but because depth requires responsibility. To think deeply is to accept that you are not merely a product of circumstances. You are a participant in your own becoming. That realization is both empowering and terrifying. When enough individuals reach this level of thought, society itself begins to change. Culture evolves not through noise, but through consciousness. History shows this clearly. Every meaningful shift in human understanding began with a small number of individuals willing to think differently, deeply and courageously. So the question is no longer why society is trapped in shallow thinking. The real question is this: will you choose to rise above it? Because the highest levels of thought are not reserved for philosophers or scholars. They are available to anyone willing to slow down, question deeply, and face themselves honestly. The moment you do, your life will never feel the same again. Reflect on this and share your thoughts. What does deep thinking mean to you? And what are you willing to let go of in order to reach it? This is where the journey truly completes. When thought reaches its most mature form, something subtle yet profound occurs. The individual stops using thinking merely as a tool to survive, compete or defend identity, and begins using it as a means of alignment with reality itself. This is the point where depth becomes not an intellectual exercise, but a way of being. Ancient philosophers understood this well. Aristotle spoke of contemplation as the highest human activity, not because it produces external results, but because it refines the soul. To think deeply is to live deliberately. At this level, a person begins to recognize how much of daily life is governed by unconscious patterns. Habits of thought repeat themselves automatically, shaping emotions, decisions, and relationships without conscious consent. Modern neuroscience confirms what thinkers like William James intuited long ago. Repeated thoughts strengthen neural pathways, making certain ways of perceiving the world feel natural and inevitable. Shallow thinking reinforces these loops. Deep thinking interrupts them. This interruption is not comfortable. When familiar mental patterns dissolve, the mind initially experiences confusion. Many mistake this confusion for failure, when in reality it is a sign of growth. Confucius observed that real knowledge begins when one realizes how little one truly knows. That realization destabilizes the ego, but it expands awareness. The mind becomes less rigid, more receptive, more alive. Another essential aspect of higher-level thinking is temporal depth. Shallow thinking is trapped in the present moment's urgency, constantly reacting to immediate stimuli. Deep thinking extends across time. It considers consequences, long-term meaning, and historical context. Hannah Arendt warned that thoughtlessness enables harm not because people are evil, but because they stop examining the implications of their actions. Depth restores moral responsibility. As thought deepens, compassion also expands. This may seem surprising, but it is inevitable. When you understand the psychological, cultural, and emotional forces shaping human behavior, judgment softens. You no longer see people merely as right or wrong, intelligent or ignorant. You see complexity. Carl Rogers emphasized that understanding another person deeply is one of the most transformative experiences possible, both for the observer and the observed. Depth humanizes. At the societal level, shallow thinking manifests as polarization. Nuance disappears. Conversations collapse into slogans. Complex issues are reduced to simplistic binaries. This creates the illusion of certainty while eroding genuine understanding. Deep thinking, by contrast, seeks integration rather than opposition. It asks how seemingly conflicting perspectives might each contain partial truth. This does not lead to indecision. It leads to wisdom. Consider how rarely modern life encourages this. Speed is rewarded. Certainty is praised. Doubt is discouraged. Yet doubt, when approached consciously, is not weakness. It is intellectual humility. Deep thinkers learn to live with unanswered questions without becoming paralyzed by them. Another marker of the highest levels of thought is self-transcendence. The individual no longer centers every experience around personal validation or threat. There is a shift from ego-centered thinking to meaning-centered thinking. Robert Greene's understanding of human nature reveals that the individual who remains trapped in constant self-concern becomes controlled by insecurity, approval, and external judgment. Depth naturally leads here because it reveals the limitations of self-absorption. Viktor Frankl observed that fulfillment arises not from pursuing happiness directly, but from dedicating oneself to something meaningful beyond the self. Depth naturally leads here because it reveals the limitations of self-absorption. Silence becomes increasingly important at this stage. Not silence as absence, but silence as presence. Blaise Pascal famously wrote that most of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. In silence, the mind reveals itself. Superficial noise fades, deeper insights surface. This is where intuition sharpens, not as mystical fantasy, but as integrated intelligence born from experience, reflection, and awareness. The tragedy is not that society lacks intelligent people. It is that intelligence is often disconnected from depth. Information without reflection produces confusion. Opinion without examination produces conflict. Power without wisdom produces destruction. History repeatedly demonstrates this pattern. Depth is the missing dimension. Yet there is hope. Every individual who chooses to think deeply weakens the collective grip of superficiality. Depth is contagious in quiet ways. It changes how one speaks, listens, chooses, and lives. Others sense it. Conversations shift. Questions deepen. Possibilities expand. So the ultimate invitation remains open, not to withdraw from the world, but to engage with it more consciously. Not to reject modern life, but to move through it without being consumed by its shallowness. To think deeply is to reclaim authorship over your inner world. Ask yourself one final question and sit with it honestly. If the quality of your life is shaped by the quality of your thinking, what level of thought are you choosing to live from right now? The answer to that question does not demand perfection. It demands awareness. And awareness, once awakened, never truly goes back to sleep. As awareness stabilizes, another transformation quietly unfolds. The individual begins to recognize that thought itself is not the ultimate authority, but a tool that must be handled with care. Many people assume that thinking more automatically means thinking better. The highest levels of thought reveal the opposite. It is not the quantity of thoughts that matters, but their clarity, depth, and alignment with reality. Robert Greene's work on mastery reveals that wisdom often comes not from endless accumulation, but from the ability to remove what is unnecessary and focus only on what truly matters. At this stage, discernment becomes essential. Not every idea deserves equal attention. Not every opinion merits engagement. Deep thinkers learn to distinguish between noise and signal, between what is urgent and what is meaningful. This ability is increasingly rare in a world that profits from distraction. Attention becomes an act of sovereignty. Where you place it determines who you become. One of the most difficult illusions to dismantle is the belief that society will reward depth. In truth, society often rewards conformity, speed, and simplification. Those who think deeply may feel out of place, misunderstood, or even invisible. Yet history shows that genuine progress has always depended on individuals who refused to think shallowly, even when it was uncomfortable or unpopular. Deep thinking also reshapes how failure is perceived. Shallow thinking interprets failure as proof of inadequacy. Deep thinking understands failure as information. It becomes feedback rather than identity. This shift reduces fear and increases resilience. When fear loosens its grip, curiosity expands, and curiosity is the lifeblood of profound thought. Another critical realization emerges here. Much of human suffering is not caused by external events, but by unconscious interpretations of those events. Robert Greene has explored how perception shapes human behavior and how people are often controlled not by reality itself, but by the meanings they attach to reality. Deep thinking exposes these interpretive layers. It allows a person to respond rather than react, to choose meaning rather than collapse into victimhood. As thought deepens further, gratitude arises naturally, not as forced positivity, but as perspective. When you understand the fragility of existence, the complexity of consciousness, and the improbability of being alive at all, entitlement fades. Appreciation grows. This shift subtly but powerfully alters how one relates to time, relationships, and ambition. The highest levels of thought also bring ethical clarity. Morality ceases to be a rigid set of rules imposed from outside and becomes an internal compass shaped by understanding. Actions are guided not by fear of punishment or desire for approval, but by coherence between values and behavior. Integrity becomes effortless because fragmentation dissolves. Importantly, deep thinking does not isolate a person from action. On the contrary, it refines action. Decisions become fewer but more deliberate. Effort becomes focused. Energy is no longer scattered across meaningless pursuits. This is why deeply thoughtful individuals often appear calm, even in chaos. Their inner world is not ruled by every external fluctuation. They have cultivated an inner center of gravity. This stability is not emotional numbness, but emotional intelligence. Feelings are experienced fully, yet they no longer dictate behavior blindly. Thought and emotion begin to cooperate rather than compete. At this depth, the individual also confronts one of the most challenging realizations of all. Many of the goals society promotes are substitutes for meaning rather than expressions of it. Status, accumulation, and constant validation promise fulfillment, but rarely deliver it. Deep thinking exposes this illusion. It asks a more difficult question, one most people avoid, because it cannot be answered quickly or externally. What is truly worth dedicating a life to? This question does not produce an immediate answer. Instead, it initiates a process. Meaning reveals itself gradually through reflection, experience, and alignment. The psychologist Abraham Maslow noted that self-actualization is not a destination, but an ongoing unfolding. The deeper one thinks, the more life becomes a dialogue rather than a checklist. Another hallmark of the highest levels of thought is responsibility without self-blame. Shallow thinking either externalizes responsibility completely or internalizes it as shame. Deep thinking finds a middle path. It recognizes influence without illusion of total control. This balance reduces both helplessness and arrogance. It allows growth without self-destruction. As this understanding matures, relationships also change. Conversations become less about winning and more about understanding. Listening deepens. Silence becomes comfortable. Differences are no longer perceived as threats, but as opportunities to refine perspective. This does not mean abandoning boundaries. It means choosing depth over domination. Society's resistance to deep thinking becomes increasingly visible from this vantage point. The pace of modern life discourages introspection. The constant demand for opinions discourages patience. Algorithms reward outrage, not insight. Yet none of these forces can fully suppress depth in an individual who has tasted it. Once you experience genuine clarity, superficiality feels hollow. The most paradoxical realization of all is this: deep thinking ultimately reveals the limits of thought itself. There comes a point where analysis must give way to presence, where understanding must be lived, not endlessly examined. Zen philosophers pointed to this when they warned that words and concepts are fingers pointing at the moon, not the moon itself. Thought prepares the ground, but being completes the process. This does not mean abandoning reason. It means integrating it. Thought becomes a servant rather than a tyrant. Life is no longer filtered entirely through mental commentary. Moments are experienced directly. Awareness expands beyond internal narration. This is where peace emerges not as escape, but as alignment. And here lies the quiet truth that brings everything together. The highest levels of thought are not about becoming superior to others. They are about becoming more honest with oneself. Shallow thinking protects the ego. Deep thinking dissolves it. In that dissolution, something more authentic takes its place. So the journey does not end with an answer. It ends with a way of seeing, a way of living, a way of engaging with reality that is less reactive, less fearful, and more awake. Society may remain trapped in shallow thinking for some time, but each individual who chooses depth creates a small rupture in that pattern. The real question, the one only you can answer, is not whether deep thinking matters. It is whether you are willing to endure the discomfort it requires in order to access the freedom it offers. Because once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. And from that moment on, every thought becomes a choice. Thanks for looking.